good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. We are recording the session so that you know that if you speak or put anything in the chat, that it is being recorded. We want to welcome you to the Career Pathways: The Road to Lenovo Virtual Guest Speaker Series. I'm Kevin English, Senior Director at NAF, and just excited about this series as it's work with our corporate partners to share with our students what's happening out there in the world today, and how folks have gotten on to their career paths and some of the journeys that they have taken. And we're so excited to share this series with you. I will turn it over to Jonathan Wilkins of Lenovo and let him introduce his team. And please place questions in the chat. And if you would make sure that you are on mute as we go through. And then if you have questions, we'll ask you to come off mute. We appreciate your attendance. And Jonathan, without further ado, here you go.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, NAF students, for joining us. We really are appreciative that you joined us this morning and glad you are here. We have a great lineup this morning of some amazing Lenovo employees. And I'll get into let them introduce themselves in just a second. To give you a little background on me, I am Jonathan Wilkins, as Kevin stated. I am the program manager for Supplier Diversity at Lenovo. So I think I have probably one of the coolest jobs in corporate America. So I get to deal with suppliers on a regular basis, specifically those diverse suppliers. And in this economy and where we are today, with the focus on diversity and inclusion being such a big focus in the world, this has been a very busy, very amazing year in so many regards. But to give you guys a little bit of background on Lenovo, Lenovo is actually an awesome place to work. First, we have an amazing culture. My colleagues that are on the call today will probably attest to that, as they will throughout the presentation today. But we're really unique. Well, we have two global headquarters. We have a headquarters here in Morrisville, North Carolina, and also in Beijing. We make a lot of different products. So we make computer systems. So for those gamers, we specifically make the Legion gaming system. ThinkPads are our primary computer that we make, servers, and we also own Motorola Mobility. So all the Motorola phones, most of the NAF students are probably not old enough to remember the original flip phone, or was it not the Sky Pager, but the BlackBerry. My wife, I think, was the last one in the world to give up her BlackBerry. It kept them in business for a little while. So that is kind of the overview. We have close to about 60,000 employees worldwide. Great company to work for. It's been an amazing ride. I've been here a little over 3 years, celebrating my 3-year anniversary in July. So I am thankful for this opportunity to be able to present and moderate this call today. So I'll start the conversation off by just kicking it over to our panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right into the questions. But a little bit of housekeeping rules. So for students, if you are not on mute, if you're not speaking or don't have a question, please keep your phone on mute. Or your device on mute. If you have a question, Kevin English will be monitoring the chat, so put that in the chat, and we will try to answer those throughout the entire conversation. You do not have to wait to the end to ask any questions. So feel free to ask a question specifically to any panelist, to myself, or to the group at any point in time. And so with that being said, I'll kick it over to Jessica to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us this morning, and thanks for the introduction, John. My name is Jessica Mara. I am a senior manager of global e-commerce, incubation, education, community, and new business models. So I actually joined Lenovo about 6 months today. Actually, I was looking at the date, thinking it's been 6 months. I came to Lenovo with 20+ years in the business of education and ed tech. And so on our worldwide team, I work with all things college and career students, parents of and guardians of kindergarten through 12th grade students, and educators. I'm also an adjunct professor at UNC for their graduate school, their Masters of Education, Innovation, Entrepreneurship, Technology. their Mighty program. And so essentially what I do at Lenovo, I'll challenge John and say that I think I might have the best job at Lenovo. We work on new businesses to encourage connection, inspiration in education. And so our newest launch is going to be a community that's worldwide, and we're just about to launch in the US, the UK, and Australia. And we're really excited about that on the eCom team and at Lenovo.
Thank you, Jessica. That's awesome. Yeah, we got to connect after we get offline on some things. Sandra, Clarke, I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks so much, Sean. Good morning, everybody. Pleased to be with you today. My name is Sandra Clarke. I'm located in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I lead our product and strategy development for Lenovo DaaS. What is DaaS? It's device as a service. And device as a service you can think of as kind of like a subscription, but for your computer and any services you get related to that. So we have a lot of things on subscription these days, whether it's Netflix, whether it's your groceries, your pet food. And so we have this device as a service subscription type model for your computer here at Lenovo. I've been with the company for a little over 10 years in a variety of different roles. And prior to being in this role, I led our virtual reality classroom project. So I worked with schools for a number of years, and appreciate the opportunity today. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandra. Really appreciate you being here. Amy Greene, we'll kick it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Greene. I am a associate UX designer, so user experience. I graduated from NC State University, and basically what I do is I help people. I make products and documentation, anything that you see and read, I help make that more easy or to interact with, more intuitive, more efficiently based on how the human mind works.
That's really cool. As I said, that's a great job, Kevin, and go Pack. By the way, Kevin, we'll kick it over to you.
Excellent, thank you. My name is Kevin Beck, and I also graduated from NC State University. And my current job title is Senior Story Technologist. Relatively new job title, but pretty well explains what I do pretty well. I work in our global corporate communications team and take the inner workings of the technology and the engineering that we develop in all of our labs around the world and kind of distill that down into the core story of why we did it, how we did it, what is it meant to bring to the customer. And I've been with Lenovo and IBM before that for, believe it or not, 23 years. And for about the last 8 years have been doing a variation of this job and racking up about 100,000 miles a year flying before this year, traveling around the world to Lenovo events and Lenovo research facilities, pulling out that story and telling the world about it.
That's really cool. I did say this the last time, but I think Kevin might have the best job or the coolest job at Lenovo. and I think he probably has this great career path of being a voiceover, doing voiceovers if he ever so choose to.
That's my fallback.
All right, so we're going to jump right into the questions. So students, remember, if you got any questions throughout, please stop us and ask us, put it in the chat, and Kevin English will pop it over to us. All right, so I'm going to start with Amy on this one. Tell us about your career path or what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Great question. What I wanted to be when I grew up was I wanted to be someone who could play video games for a living, get paid to play video games. I've always loved video games, and I wanted to understand why video games make me frustrated, make me happy.
Oh.
And so I went to college and
I am the work from this guy.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, my fault. Keep going. Sorry.
No, you're good. So I've always enjoyed why I like video games, what makes people like them, hate them, frustrated, all that kind of good stuff. So I went to college, studied psychology, worked in a cognitive lab, and that opened the door for understanding not just video games, but all kinds of technology and how people can interact with them. And that's how I got to be into UX.
So let me explore that a little bit. So you wanted to be a gamer,
Yep.
but you went to school for psychology. So how did you put those two worlds together to say, you know what, this just makes sense, and you're not having somebody lay on your couch?
That's a great question. I loved what made me love video games. Like, why do we like them so much? It was all about behavior for me. Why do I choose playing support roles? Why do I choose grouping up with people all the time? Why do I hate the frustration part? And just how do I make it better? How can I make things better? I'd play games all the time and think, man, I could really improve that. I could really make that better. This is awful. Like, I don't like this experience. And I kind of did some research, and I learned that that's actually a thing called user experience. Is basically um, learning how to make things more intuitive and more easier for people based on how they think. And so that was very much psychology, which I've always loved psychology, and that's how I kind of bridged the gap. And I wanted to play more video games and that kind of thing. I still do.
That is awesome. Thank you for that.
You're
So all
very
right, so
welcome.
I'm gonna kick it over to Kevin. Kevin, so tell us what tell us about your career path and what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Well, I think like a lot of people, when I was very little, I wanted to be a fireman, um, which is a fabulous job. But my interest all through middle school and high school was really in computers. I was always a hobbyist and I always had computers at the house, built them, taken them apart. But my senior year in high school, I just fell in love with AP biology and decided when I went to NC State to major in biology. And I knew I wanted to learn a foreign language, so I took 4 years of Japanese. When I got out of college, I worked in Japan for a couple of years on a sort of internship, and then came home and had an opportunity through a friend of a friend to interview at IBM for a technical job. I remember the manager asking me, why do I think I can do this technical engineering type job with a biology degree? And I said, well, I'm a scientist. I know how to think systematically about very complex interactive systems. And the language skills, they were specifically looking for somebody who could deal with Japanese software. And went into that, stayed in development for 4 or 5 years. Got an opportunity to go over to IBM Asia Pacific in Japan once again. Was a product manager, ran one of our desktop product lines for Asia Pacific. Came home, did a few other operational jobs that were interesting, and I learned a lot, didn't care for it, and then happened into this job because there was a real demand for someone who could speak at events around the world to customers and work with our communications and marketing teams to really understand the core concepts and what we were doing in engineering. Right? We've always been a very customer focused, and to Amy's point, customer experience led, and she improves the products and I tell people how the engineers put that into practice.
Thank you, Kevin. That is, like I said, probably one of the coolest jobs, I think, to bridge that gap. All right, so there's a theme here, and I'm gonna see if Sandra keeps up with the same theme going on. So Sandra, tell us about your career path and what you wanted to be when you grew up.
I think you might be a little bit surprised, John. I might be a little bit of the black sheep in this group. So I wanted to be an artist. And when I went to college, I went to study art. That's what I got my degree in at Meredith College, a women's college here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I thought that I wanted to be an artist, or I wanted to teach art. I come from a long line of teachers. My mother, father, and sister are all teachers. So I thought that's what I wanted to do as well. And then it just, I sort of started doing some of the teaching classes and realized it wasn't for me. So I graduated college with a bachelor's degree in art and wasn't really sure what to do. And so I started working in real estate. And I thought, okay, sales is my calling. This is what I really enjoy doing. And after a couple of years doing that, I saw an opening at a small software startup in the Raleigh-Durham area. And I thought, this looks interesting. I'm interested in technology. And I kind of never looked back. I worked there for a number of years, and then about 11 years ago, applied for a job at Lenovo in our sales department. And I've just held a variety of different roles in sales, and then I moved into product development and strategy, and now our device as a service subscription area, leading that development. So I think I've come about it from a very roundabout way. I have a very creative mind, so I'm a great problem solver in some of our incubation businesses and areas that are very kind of cutting edge for Lenovo. And so I've just kind of worked my way up that way. So starting from art, even if you don't really know what you want to do, there are many opportunities and ways to get into tech.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sandra. So, all right, so you're still on the same theme, and I'm going to pull it together at the end and see if Jessica holds on to this one. Jessica, tell us about your career path and what you wanted to be when you grew up.
So I'm super happy to meet all of these colleagues because I think there's a great deal of overlap. I also lived in Japan for a while as a student ambassador and speak a little bit of Japanese, although I'm sure it's not as good as Kevin's. And so when I was little, I really wanted to be a pediatrician. So I will tell you that it did stay in keeping with wanting to help children reach their fullest potential. And still what I believe in and still what I work toward in all of the roles that I've held, but it has taken a bit of a path. So I had a 4-year academic scholarship to college for nursing because my guidance counselor told me that I would never be a pediatrician, which was something that was commonly told to women at that time. So just keep that in mind. It turns out he wasn't necessarily all the way wrong because I was really bad at science. So I will also say that my scores were good, but I just didn't get it. So my mind does not work the way that some other people's do. So I actually ended up in business. And then much like Sandra was more into business and the arts, I went to the Fashion Institute of Technology. I studied in Paris. And then I went on to work for Ralph Lauren and lived in New York City. And I often tell this story because people think it's funny, and especially with this age group. But I lived in New York City and I had a salary that I thought was about 50 times what it actually was. So I had some extra debt and I needed to pay it off. And so I took out there was an ad in the New York Times with National Geographic. They needed a set of eyes on these 8 science and 8 social studies modules that they were creating for students. And so I took an extra part-time job and went to DC on the weekends. It ended up turning into a consulting business that I then grew over the course of 13 years with National Geographic as my bread and butter consulting company, and went on later to work with them. And then created a STEM program with one of our National Geographic explorers. So anyway, all of that to say, it doesn't matter really where you start. I think it's where your interest is all the way. And I think the whole purpose in what we're doing today is, really bridging that gap between, what are the skills you need for careers that aren't necessarily fully tech focused. I will say, since joining Lenovo 6 months ago, there are certain conversations, while I've been in ed tech for a really long time now, there are conversations that are way over my head. And that's okay, because my skill set might be more in the area of business or money, or coming up with solutions for engagement for students and teachers. So anyway, thank you. And John, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I'm so impressed that all you guys were so adventurous. I just wanted to be a superhero. I wanted to be Superman. That's the only thing I wanted to do. No, seriously. I really thought that I wanted to be a lawyer. So I went to NC State, got a degree in civil engineering, and I wanted to go to school to be a patent lawyer. Things did not work out like I planned, but that is the theme. I want the students to kind of see that everybody kind of has intertwined throughout their lives. They started down a certain path, and then the journey took them a different way. And that's okay. I think that is very important to our development. I am one who truly believes that a mistake is not truly a mistake, but it's an opportunity to learn and grow and become better from it. So just remember that. You might go to school to be an architect and end up working at Lenovo. Who knows, right? But you could be an architecture engineer. Who knows, right? You could do it all. There's a joke, but I'll leave that alone about you could go into presidency, whatever you wanted to do. No matter how good your grades are. but we'll move on from that one. So the next question is, what extracurricular activities were you involved in high school? And did those activities help to build the skills that you utilize today? And I'll start with Kevin on that one.
This won't come as any surprise to people who know me. My main extracurricular in high school was Quiz Bowl.
I knew you were going to say football.
No, not a sports guy. We had computer club and a few others. I think I was in the foreign language club, took French in high school. But I always say that the thing about Quiz Bowl, and I actually carried on to NC State and was on NC State's College Bowl competitive team for 4 years, is the learning and studying of, we won't say trivia, but less well-known knowledge has its own rewards. But it's the way that it makes you think, the recall of being under pressure in front of an audience and having to come up with an answer immediately has been a fabulous skill. I won't lie to you and say I was ever really afraid of public speaking, but it's made me, as the occasional PR spokesman, when I get asked questions for Lenovo, made me fairly unconcerned, if not fearless, about being put on the spot and having to answer a question. I did that for 6 years in high school and college, and I think it's turned out to be a great addition to my skill set in corporate life.
That ability to communicate is very important. Were there any things that you did specifically to help outside of like the Quiz Bowl training? Were there any organizations that you've joined to help develop that skill? I was, we had a pretty active, I was not a member, but as a student, we had a pretty active Rotary Club speech competition series in my high school, and I participated in that many, many times. So even from an early age, relatively young, junior high school, sought out those opportunities to get up in front of people and explain my opinion on things. And that is essentially what I do for a living in a slightly more controlled way now. Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. So Amy, same question for you on that one.
As far as high school, extracurricular, I was always into art. Like Sandra, I love art, and so I did honors art all 4 years that I could. I was an ROTC. That really helped learn. That class taught me discipline and structure. I really valued my time at ROTC when I was in high school. But I'll also say something that I didn't really think that would come in handy was my English and grammar, as far as review and documentation now. And there's a lot of documentation that has been translated, so it's not in perfect English. And so being a native English speaker while in a global company is very important to help with grammar and spelling. And just, I didn't realize how much I needed those skills and how much they would come in handy down the road. And I played lots of sports. Softball, that was my extracurricular. So my top 3 is art, ROTC, and softball as far as extracurricular in high school.
Okay, so how because I played a lot of sports too, so I think I did almost everything except basketball when I was in high school. So how did that help you? Like once you came into the working world, what was it like from that team aspect?
Working with people, really being on a team-based game, a sports team, it really made me realize how important it is to help read people, understand people, work with people. Things aren't going to always go your way. You could give it your 100% best and you could still lose a game. And that carries over. You could still try your best and fail, but you just have to do it again. You have to keep trying and not give up. And you can't give up in sports. Your coach will yell at you, you can't give up in sports, and you sure can't give up in your work. So that, I feel like
We hope that your manager doesn't yell at you, but we know that happens sometimes, right? All right, so right, you just cannot give up, and that is the key. That's what I wanted. I was hoping that you would say that out of the sports world, because that is the key to teamwork and never quitting. Because there's some days that we probably all have walked in the building. We're not walking in buildings right now, but we've all said, you know what, I want to go back home today.
Yep.
But we keep fighting.
That's right.
All right, so question for Jessica. All right, so this is a good one, and I'll say even for me, it said the question is, you work at a tech company, how tech savvy are you? I'll tell you, even this morning, kids, I had trouble getting in. I'm on my phone because I couldn't get it to Zoom on my computer because it wouldn't act right. So, and I didn't have time to figure it out. So Jessica, working at a tech company, how tech savvy are you?
I am not. I am not tech savvy. I am not. I will say that I understand very big picture, what it is that we're trying to achieve with the tech, right? I understand once I've used it, and I'm a visual learner and I'm a doer as a learner. So once I've used it and tried to understand it, I can definitely understand it better. If it's a business model, I can see it in a different kind of way, right? But if we're talking about actual tech specs or something, you know, I mean, I clearly know how to turn on my computer. You know I would say to you, and I would say this to any student too, you know all of your basics. So know, Office, including Excel and Word. You use everything with both systems, use everything under G Suite as well, so that you understand all of that. That will carry you very far, because much of what we do is communication and writing. I would say if there's one skill to hone up on, to, would be writing over all tech skills at this point. But no, tech, no, I would give myself not a grade.
Thank you, Jessica. Sandra, what about you?
You know, I'm middle of the road, John, but if I could, I'd love to go back and answer your question about the extracurricular activities.
Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead.
Because I'm not super tech savvy, so I probably don't have a lot to contribute there. But I did want to stress with this group, volunteering. I volunteered all throughout middle and high school, and I actually ended up getting a full scholarship to Wake Forest University which was called their Pro Humanitate Scholarship for community service specifically. So while I was absolutely terrible at every sport I've ever attempted in my entire life, there are still a lot of scholarship opportunities for other types of extracurriculars too. And I think it really helps develop you as a human being in terms of your empathy with others. It's so important. And also, it's great for networking too. I mean, you meet so many people, and whether it's all different types of organizations, that can help give you skills, connections. One thing you learn when you get out into the working world is sometimes it is who you know as well as what you know. And so you can make great connections with volunteering. So I would definitely encourage everyone to think about that. I know sometimes it's hard to make time, but really the benefits outweigh the time you put in.
No, thank you for going back to that, because that's so important, not only just from a career development perspective, but for your own personal development, because giving back to others is something that you can, I mean, it is a feeling that you can never recreate in anything else, helping and reaching back and being a benefit to your community. That is awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm glad you went back to that one. Okay, Amy, you mentioned this before, working for a global company. Being that we have 2 headquarters, we have vastly diversity in our cultures that work at Lenovo. What has it been like for you working at a global company?
That's a great question. It's been a shock, I guess you'd say a culture shock. I was born and raised in North Carolina. I've never really left the country. So when I started working here a year ago, because I'm quite new as well, it was an awesome shock. I didn't realize just everyone here was just so open and nice, and I didn't really realize that things were translated as far as documentation, and if I used a word that could mean easy here, it could translate to something else. And when helping manufacture or design logos, I may not be able to use the word that I want to use because when it gets translated, it's going to be longer. So I have to account for the length of the text. So that has all been so interesting to me, just to how, also emails, how they're worded, how they're structured, everything. Just, I loved, it's a really awesome eye-opening experience just to be able to see how different things are. But then at the end of the day, we're all here for the same reason and we all can come together. So I think that it's just been it's an eye-opener experience, but it's all been so positive. Like nothing negative. It's just, there are some language barriers, but everyone's patient and we try to communicate the best we can, and it's just been great.
That is true. You said something I think is important. Like, we all work towards the same goal, and it is amazing to work for a company that, even if we can have cross-departmental relationships, and we're all trying to strive to be the best tech company in the world. And you see it by just everybody in the attitudes and the way they carry themselves. So I'm gonna save Kevin and Jessica for the end of that, because you guys both lived overseas, and I want to ask Sandra what is her thoughts on working for a global company.
Yeah, that's a great question, John. And I think a lot of us, we get very kind of entrenched in our own ways of doing things. Pankaj Jemawat wrote a great book, if we have any economists on the phone, called The World is Not Flat, that talks about how most of our contacts are kind of very local and within our own families and friends. And working for a global company definitely changes your exposure to that. I studied French a lot when I was in school, and I was also a tutor, and I continue in a women's French group every week and have for many years. And I encourage everyone to join a women's group, all the women on the line, for additional support. And that really has helped serve me well. So foreign language, guys, you will use those skills if you work for a global company. And the fact that I can speak French is a big help with a lot of my colleagues, especially in Europe, where they're not used to other people speaking their languages. So I do think you'll put those good skills to use if you work for a global company. And it's great to just learn about different cultures, different holidays and traditions. That's been an interesting thing for me to learn about at a global company, and just be exposed to different types of ideas. Things that, for me, sometimes I assume, or I think everyone knows, and a colleague will say, well, what do you mean by that? So it helps me kind of learn to use communication better, which is another skill you would learn. So I think it's great if you have the opportunity.
I
Yes.
100% agree with what she says, everything.
Yes,
Yes.
that I will say that as well too.
Yes.
I'll stand on the porch and wave that flag for you also. So Kevin and Jessica, so you guys tell us from your perspective. You guys said both have lived, spent some time in Japan, and it's a vastly different culture than the U.S., right? So what has that been like? So from that perspective, living in a country, a foreign country, and then comparing that to U.S. work culture, what is that? What is the difference that you guys can see there? And I'll go ahead and give that over to Kevin first.
All right. It was absolutely not something that was on my radar early in high school. I was lucky enough to go on trip to Europe, 4 countries in 10 days, my junior year in high school. And it really sort of opened my eyes. I'd taken a little bit of French at that time, and wow, this is something I could actually use. And when I went to college, I just sort of set as a goal for myself that I was going to learn something. I was going to take 4 full years of something. And I always had an interest in technology, so Japan was a natural place. And so I landed in Japan in 1993, having had 4 years in college, but never having been there. And so it was, even with that, a huge surprise and a massive learning opportunity, because I think it was Sandra who said, especially if you're like me, and I know some of the others said you grew up in North Carolina, at same town my entire life, and just having my eyes opened to a different way of doing things and a fundamentally different way of thinking about things. There's an old saying, I forget, Aristotle or somebody, the one thing I know is that I know nothing. And sort of like, as even in your early 20s, sort of starting over and revisiting all the assumptions you've ever made about the way things work. It has been a tremendous skill and it's changed my life. As I said, I ended up going back to Japan for a second time for 3 years on assignment with IBM. Met my wife there, who, in an odd coincidence, was from Raleigh, North Carolina, originally. Her parents are from India. I've traveled there extensively for weeks at a time. I think I've, with Lenovo, been to over 50 countries, and I work with people every day. And I just can't echo enough what Sandra said, is that it just teaches you to challenge what you think you know, not to rest on your laurels, not to proceed or make decisions in a vacuum or based on single points of data. It just really opens your mind, and it has been a massive asset in my career, the ability and the willingness to jump in and deal with different cultures and cultural misunderstandings and problems, and not to mention the passive ability that you get to just understand different accents. we in the US sometimes forget, and I'm sure we've all been on the phone, and there's no right or wrong. We talk to people, or a lot of us do every day, from all over the world, and even if they're native speakers, they might be from Scotland, they might be from Australia, they might be from India, and just understanding where people are coming from and the way they use language is a massive, massive skill.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a question in the chat. So let's grab that one real quick. Kevin, will you
Sure.
read that question for us?
Is from Tyrena Davis, and it says, does this company manufacture in the healthcare field? So they want to know what you guys do in healthcare.
Would that be a question for Amy?
I don't think I can answer that. To my knowledge, I mostly look at logos and documentation for servers in the DCG. So if so, I won't know the full specs on it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm the best person to answer that question. It's a great question, though.
Anybody want to jump in and grab that one?
Sure, real quick. We do not make primary dedicated healthcare devices like some companies, but we do manufacture a lot of equipment that is used in healthcare on the computing side. We have some special healthcare editions of some of our ThinkPad products. And then, of course, our servers, software are used extensively in the healthcare business.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Kevin, were there any other questions?
No, but we're at 9:40, so you can ask the last question to the panelists, and then we'll
Okay.
get on to the next set of questions.
Will do. Thank you, Kevin, for keeping us on time.
You got
So
it.
question for you, right? Because this is an important question. So I know that I would probably have a book that if I could go back and talk to that 16 to 18-year-old window of myself, like we would just be spending days talking, right? So what would be the one piece of advice? What would be the one thing that you would tell your younger self when you were in high school, about to graduate high school? And I'll start out with Sandra on that one.
You know, I've been thinking about this one for a while. There's so many different things. I mean, I think I think I'd go back to what I said earlier, which is around volunteering. I really think that it's so important to develop life skills and also for networking purposes. So I'm going to go back to that. I just think there are so many things that I learned and so many people that I met and connections I made, things I learned about myself and things I did and didn't want to do with my life by volunteering. So I'm going to leave that as my piece of advice for today.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, Jessica, what about you? What would be your piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to get an MBA ASAP. So I'm a huge, huge believer in the disruption of higher ed, and that micro-credentials and badges are extremely important and valuable in terms of determining skills and skill set for positions specifically, or just in general. And so I don't think it's necessary to have an advanced degree or in a lot of other areas. I will say though that I think that MBA programs, the way that they're structured now, nothing replaces it that I've seen so far. And I've been in this for a while. So I would definitely go and get an MBA as soon as possible.
Awesome. So yeah, now they have these great joint undergrad master's programs that you can finish all in like what, 5-6 years at the same time.
Yeah,
So those are
exactly.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Kevin, what about you? What would you tell your younger self?
I would say to follow your interests, which I've done to a point, but to make sure that you clearly communicate upwards through your management chains. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of great managers and to be given a lot of great opportunities, but I've seen a lot of people who are very, very good at what they do. And just because of their personality type, you don't have to be completely aggressive, but I've seen people who've been very passive and just sort of assumed that things would work out for them or that opportunities would open up. And the best things that have ever happened to me in my work life, assignments overseas, new jobs, is because I specifically asked for them. And that's, I think some of you will sympathize. That's hard when you're raised to be a polite Southerner. But don't alienate people, but look at what's out there, talk to people who are doing that thing, decide if you like to do it, and go for it.
Absolutely. And I think the last person is Amy to answer that one, right? Yep.
I would tell myself, Amy, it's going to get tough. Things are going to get hard for you, but don't give up. I failed out of college the first time. I didn't do so great in high school, but I pulled myself up by my bootstraps and I went back and I finished. It was hard, but I did it. And grades, they can help, but they, as you see, as Jessica also said, you don't have to have all the degrees in the world to get where you want to go. Experience and work make up a lot of it. And that really helped me. What I lacked in educational intelligence, whatever you call it, what I liked in all my A's, I made up for in my work ethic. And so that helped me a lot. So I would definitely tell myself, keep working, don't give up, even when it gets tough.
So that is one of the things that I have my boys, they can probably come in this room right now and repeat. And I always tell them, and they say it with me, hard work beats talent when talent does not want to work hard. So you can have all the ability, all the talent in the world, but if you're not putting it to work, you're not fighting and grinding every day, you're not going to make it. You will get steamrolled, and especially in a company like Lenovo. Like we are a great big family, but we are very efficient and task oriented. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. So I'll throw mine in here. So mine, and I know we're at time, is I would have told myself to find a mentor early. And don't be afraid to ask someone to be a mentor. Because I think it's so important that you have somebody that you can strive or that has the qualities, whether it be whatever your faith is, spiritually, morally, professionally, ethically, whatever that person may be. And you can have multiple mentors that cover all of those, but find somebody that's willing to pour into you, and then in the future, pour into someone. Pay it forward. I think that's one of the best movies I've ever seen when it comes to talking about, giving back to the community. But find a mentor. That is vitally important. And ask them. I guarantee you it'll be rare that if you ask somebody to be your mentor, they will tell you no. And if they tell you no, it's because they know they don't have the bandwidth to be able to give you what you need. And so that with that, I will turn, and thank you to all the panelists. Thank you so much. This has been great questions. And now I'll turn it back over to Kevin.
Sure. So we now have some question time in about 10 minutes or so. I see some questions popping up in the chat. Please send the questions through the chat. I'll ask this first one, and if someone else has another one, please add them to the chat. This question is from Sam Joseph, and it says, what do you recommend graduating high school seniors when figuring out what career path to take? And Jonathan, I'll let you kind of ask a couple of panelists questions and move on, because you're doing such a great job.
That's a tough question, because if you notice, all the panelists have all different career paths than what they originally started, right? So Sandra, who probably has the most different career path, starting out in art and wanting to be a teacher, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, for me, I just started taking my general education classes when my first year in college, and I just, was taking biology, a history, and art, which ended up working out. English, your basics, and I think you just, see what where your passion is. What do you find yourself, gravitating to? Which professor do you find yourself grabbing in the hallway to learn more? What clubs are you interested in joining? And I think that kind of thing for me just started crystallized naturally because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. There's a Billy Crystal quote that I love that says, "I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to be good at it." And that's kind of the way that I operated. And so I think it'll just naturally happen for you when you start taking those classes to see what you really like.
That is awesome. I'm gonna have to put that Billy Crystal quote up. I'm gonna have to find that one.
I had it in my desk for many years.
That is awesome. Kevin, what about you? You want to answer that one?
For me personally, it was opening the aperture beyond just computers, just biology. I took a lot of electives. Most of them, most of my allowed credits in electives were taken up by Japanese, but I took history classes, and I've met people who've been very successful who focused solely on one thing, right? They knew that they wanted to be a specific type of engineer, but outside of those few people, I think everyone else in the world learned so much about themselves from casting a wide net and pulling a little bit from history, pulling from foreign language. And it gives you a better view of what's out there, what opportunities there are available, and gives you lets you choose something that is more fulfilling to your whole self, if that's not too philosophical.
No, that's perfect. So yeah, I agree with you on that. There are people I put people in two buckets. They are river people and there's forest people. So I consider like a LeBron James, the person that you talked about that always wanted to be an engineer. I have a buddy who's a doctor. He knew he was 4 years old. He knew he wanted to be a doctor. He was put in a canoe and floated down the river towards his career path and never deviated from that, right? Those people. Me, I was a forest person. I bumped into some trees. I looked for my path. I got on the wrong path. I got back on the right path. So I think, and that's the majority of us, right?
Exactly.
We kind of filter away, find our way around, and we feel our way around until we get to where we want to be in life. And so now I really will say that I am in the career that is my passion, like to help people, and that is a part of my job every day, to be a benefit not only to Lenovo but in the communities that we serve as well. And I think that's a very important thing. All right, Kevin, Kevin English, what's your next question?
Next question we have is, which computer languages should high school students learn?
Excel. That's the only one I know. That's not even a computer language. So I'll kick that over to whoever wants to answer that question.
I'm trying to teach myself Python. I hear that is a very, very easy language, especially for those who aren't very technical. I hear Python is a great language to start. And I think the top that I know is Python, and then C# or C++, and that's the extent of programming languages. But especially if you're not technical or tech savvy or whatever you want to call it, I hear that Python is the most easiest to learn. Easiest.
I'm gonna take your word on that one, because they were all hard to me. I'm not gonna lie.
Just follow that up by saying I am not a programmer. I did a little bit of coding in high school with some older languages, but I would echo what Amy says. Python and some of the other, considered to be easy languages. Even if you don't intend to program, if you do want to learn, work in technology, to echo what Sandra, Jessica, and everybody, even you, John, said, understanding the way that the people you work with think in programmatic fashion is very useful, even if you're not a programmer yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Sandra, Jessica, you want to jump in on one of those? No,
No,
like, no, I'm not
I'd agree.
too
I'd agree with them. I would definitely say to learn Python before Ruby or Ruby on Rails, right? Like I think sticking, and I would also say try an app. There's tons of free apps out there for beginning coders, and see, kind of work your way through that. I think also back to the recommending to graduating high school seniors, I would say any opportunity that you have to job shadow or to intern, take it. And that means anything, right? I think Kevin's done a really great job, and Sandra, about talking about the opportunities that are out, might be within your job too, to kind of take you on the career paths you want to go. But I would say just anything you can do to get out there, sit in a lab, sit on, even audit a class if it's something you're thinking you want to take, before you invest, the $5,000 into the courses that you'll need for credit. I would just audit it, make sure it's something you think you want to go toward, and go toward it, but take all the opportunities.
Absolutely.
John?
There are a couple of things that I'm not sure if they're languages, Power BI and Tableau, but those are becoming very popular in the analytics world because they're for dashboarding and helping to understand data, which we're a huge data-driven company, and understanding and be able to have that at the drop of a hat to be able to push over to someone so they can understand what's going on, recognize trends or anything. That is a great benefit to be able to understand how to do those. Kevin, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have one last question and we're getting close to time. So one last question quickly, if we could. What broad skill sets are useful or looked at in a company hiring in their IT department or technology company?
All right, who wants to take that one?
I'll start. I'll keep it short. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kevin, go.
I was just going to say communication across disciplines, across backgrounds. The people who I see succeed are the people who can sit down, analyze a problem, and talk concretely about their view of the solution. We can all ramble, most of Southerners certainly can, and go on and on and on in casual conversation, but the ability to sit down in a meeting with bosses and higher level executives, it's how you get noticed. One is that you give clear, concise, well thought out solutions, and that you know how to communicate in a way that is suited to the environment and to the culture of the company, which changes, from company to company. Communication skills.
Oh, that is awesome. Thank you. Anybody else want to tackle that one?
I would say your skill set is super important too. So any certifications that you have, definitely communication. And on top of that too, how you communicate it out. So for example, Lenovo communicates through PowerPoint. And I've been in other startups prior to this where they are, PowerPoint is not the way they communicate, and they never will. So it's only used really for pitches. So I would say know exactly how the company communicates, and then really embrace that and go in that direction. But yeah, they're going to want to see what certified skills you have too.
To bounce off that, I would agree. Definitely learn PowerPoint, Word, Excel. It may seem kind of not really that important, but for us, but I'm all the time on Word and all the time on PowerPoint, as you say. And I didn't really realize how much those skills came in handy until I started working at Lenovo. So I think having the basics of PowerPoint, Excel, Word is very, as far as a broad skill, is very, very useful. And communication, just like Kevin said.
Yeah, I would just add to that, and I was going to say communication as well, but I think also your writing skills. I think Jessica mentioned this earlier. It's so important because so much of the communication we do is on email, and many other organizations are the same way. So you really need to make sure that you have good writing skills, and I think that is apparent when you're having a conversation with a potential employer, whether it's via email, whether it's other ways of communicating. The way that you articulate your points are very important in writing and verbally.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. That communication is the key to your career development and anything that you want to go, whether it be being able to understand people's dialects from different cultures to presenting to leadership. And leadership wants you to be precise. The 3 B's: be brief, my brother, be brief. They want you to get it in and get it out. Hit them with the highlights. They don't want a lot of detail. So you got to learn that going in. And I think that's a skill set that I am still developing, because as Kevin says, being a Southerner, I can be long-winded. I know that. I can talk to anyone, anytime. All right. So with that, Kevin English, do we have anything else?
Perfect. So first want to say thank you to all the panelists and to our students and teachers listening.